Good evening, and thank you for joining us for this online event, Minding Your Business, Keys to Achieving Emotional Well-Being and Success for Entrepreneurs. This event is hosted by the Blue Ridge Crossroads Small Business Development Center, which is located in Gay Lakes, Virginia. I'm Mandy Archer, and I'm director of our center. I am joined by Teresa Catron, who is a marketing counselor for our office. And we're one of 27 centers across Virginia that offer no cost and confidential business counseling. But tonight's focus is on your emotional well-being as a person and an entrepreneur. And they say if you love what you do, you will never work a day in your life. While this might be true, let's be real. Small business owners do what they love and all of those other things that can take a toll on your mental health. So that's why we're delighted to bring you professional speaker and author Rachel Lynn Carter. Rachel is a licensed professional counselor, Napoleon Hill certified instructor. She's a former director of Napoleon Hill Scholars Program and also a former instructor of the Keys to Success course at the University of Virginia's College at Wise. Rachel's a Law of Attraction basic practitioner with the Global Sciences Foundation and an honorary member of the National Society of Leadership and Success. So in addition to her many speaking engagements, Rachel has been a guest on Journey to Success, Blog Talk Radio, Havila and Friends podcast, and attended Secret Knock, which is an invite-only networking event for investors and entrepreneurs in San Diego, California. So before I hand the reins over to Rachel, I'm going to review just a few housekeeping items since we're online. So this webinar is being recorded. Closed captions should be available, and it should be either showing up or by request if you ask for permission. It can be hidden if you don't want to see that down on that live transcript button. If you did not receive or were unable to access the documents, we will post those in the chat box when Rachel references those during her presentation. This is meant to be interactive. Hard to do sometimes online because we're muted and other things, but we do want to hear from you. So please feel free to post comments or questions in the chat box. If you have something you want to share with the group that you feel comfortable sharing, or if you want to use the reaction button to raise your hand, then we'll call on you periodically through some break times. So with nothing further, of course, you can send us a message in chat if you have a question about any of that. But let me please welcome Rachel Lynn Carter.
Thank you so much, Mandy, and thanks to all of you for tuning in this evening for Minding Your Business, Keys to Emotional Success and Well-Being for Entrepreneurs. And I just want to take a moment to really commend you for taking this opportunity this evening to work on your own personal growth and development and to enhance your own self-care. So kudos to all of you for taking that time for yourself this evening. And thank you, ladies at the Blue Ridge Crossroads Institute, for bringing me on board to facilitate this workshop and for all of the assistance you ladies have provided me along the way. So thank you for having me, and really appreciate you ladies as well. And just wanted to share something funny with you, because I have all these little synchronicity things that happen to me all the time. And you mentioned that I'm a Law of Attraction practitioner, and I was scrolling Facebook right before I logged on to the meeting. And then I had this post that popped up, and it says, "Current mood, manifesting my dreams and minding my business." And I thought, oh my goodness, I have to share that because that's just too funny. But anyway, that was just something I wanted to share. So give me just a second. I'm going to share my screen and get my PowerPoint pulled up, and then we will be ready to roll. All right, I'm hoping you guys can see my screen. Are we good? All right, so first off, let me minimize this so that I can see. We're just going to talk about what is this workshop going to offer you. So basically, what we're going to be talking about and what you're going to learn about are the following things. So hopefully it's going to increase your understanding of the common emotional mental health issues that entrepreneurs experience. And I'm going to introduce you to multiple ways to enhance your well-being. I'm going to assist you in recognizing signs of distress, burnout, depression, and anxiety in yourself and in others, perhaps your employees. It's going to promote insight as to how your thoughts and behavioral patterns may be draining your energy and reducing your productivity. Going to teach you how to increase your productivity without increasing work hours. So you definitely want to be tuned in for that piece. Help you to discover the power of mindset and its impact on mental health and success. And I'm going to introduce you to mindfulness and ways to incorporate this practice into your everyday life. I'm going to assist you in developing self-care strategies to increase your emotional energy, productivity, creativity, and general well-being. And last but not least, I hope to inspire you to live life to the fullest. So those are some of the objectives of today's workshop. And I'm going to go ahead and look at some introductions. So I'm not really sure how many people are on right now, but is there anyone that would like to just maybe say your name, where you're from, and what your business is that you want to kind of plug for us? You can type that into the chat box if you'd like, or if there's not too many people on here, we can take a few for audio and visual. So does anybody want to share anything about you in that aspect?
And there's only about 8 of you. So if y'all want to quickly do that, you're welcome to, or like Rachel said, put it in the chat box.
I'd be happy to go first. My name, you can't see me, but I'm Kristen Chapin, and I am in Botetourt County, and I am working on a marketing agency. It's called Marquetch. So that's what I'm doing right now.
Oh, awesome. Well, nice to meet you, Kristen. Glad you're here.
And Autumn put, oh, I'm sorry, go Joyce, you go.
Oh, okay. Hi, I'm Joyce Rouse in Grayson County, Virginia, and I have a longtime music production publishing company that I moved here from Nashville. I'm primarily a songwriter, also a producer, and used to do a lot of live performances around the country until COVID hit. And now I am not traveling, doing some things by Zoom, but I'm looking at additional ways to manage all of this change that is coming on us.
All right. Well, that's awesome, Joyce. Thank you for being here, and would love to hear you perform sometime.
So
Okay.
Autumn put in the chat box. She's here with her husband, Mike, and they have started a bookstore for new used books. John has joined us from Buffalo Mountain Zip Line. And as we all know, we're probably most everyone's at home, so we understand muted and things of that nature. And Buffalo Mountain Zip Line is employed. Tammy is from Roanoke. Her and her husband have a car wash. And going backwards, Autumn is in Dublin. So we're in kind of the Southwest Virginia area so far.
That's awesome. Thank you all for sharing. Thank you for being here. And we'll go ahead and move forward. All right, so let's just talk about mental health to start with. And I wanted to include the actual definition of mental health because sometimes people think, oh, well, I don't have a diagnosis, so mental health doesn't apply to me. But mental health applies to everyone. And that's why I wanted to share this with you, just so that you get an overall perspective of what this real definition is. So basically, mental health encompasses emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It influences your cognitions, the way that you think, the way that you perceive, which also determines how you behave. It also determines how an individual handles stress, interpersonal relationships, and decision-making. Mental health includes subjective well-being. It's your perceived self-efficacy, your autonomy, competence, intergenerational dependence, and self-actualization of one's intellectual and emotional potential, among others. But if we look at the perspective of positive psychology, mental health may include an individual's ability to enjoy life and create a balance between life activities and efforts to achieve psychological resilience. So when you look at that definition and you see what all it encompasses, it applies to everyone. And some statistics here that I think are very noteworthy is that 72% of entrepreneurs are directly or indirectly affected by mental health issues, as compared to 48% of non-entrepreneurs. So that kind of gives you a really big number there that entrepreneurs are more so affected by mental health than the average population. So that is according to the National Institute of Mental Health. And some common diagnoses and experiences of entrepreneurs include depression, anxiety, ADHD, bipolar, and substance abuse issues. And we'll be taking a look at a couple of those specifically today, a little more in depth. So why is it important for entrepreneurs to make their mental health a priority? Well, you could look at it this way. Just as an athlete depends on his or her physical health being in tip-top shape, to win, entrepreneurs, those at the forefront of the knowledge economy, depend on their mental health to propel them towards success. And I don't know if any of you have ever seen this picture here, but this is called the triangle of health. And I think it's something to familiarize yourself with, because it really gives a clear picture of how everything is affected by everything else. And so at the center is your DNA, that's your genes, your genetics. And then we have your biochemistry. Your biochemistry is affected by things like sleep, sunlight, the foods that you eat, or any substances that you may ingest. Physical health is in the corner there. That's any physical activity. And then the mental health is mental health, the stress, the depression, things like that. So everything goes in a circle and bounces off each other. So your biochemistry is going to affect your physical health affects your mental health, and then it just swirls around. Mental health affects physical health, and it can change your biochemistry. So just something to kind of look at there, because anything that you do in one of those areas is actually affecting you as the whole person. So just wanted to put that picture up there for you guys to see how everything is affected. So stress. I'm sure that some of you out there may be experiencing some stress or have experienced stress in the past. But it's one of the big factors with entrepreneurs, because a lot of times you guys are burning the candle at both ends, and a lot of pressure on you to succeed. And a lot of times, sometimes, it's like you're this own island out there on your own, and it's make or break, and it's on you. So there's a huge amount of stress that comes with, being an entrepreneur. But long-term stress overwhelms the body's fight or flight instinct. And that increases the likelihood of feeling anxious or depressed, as well as impacting your physical health. So a lot of times stress can create migraines or muscle aches or intestinal issues, a lot of different areas where your body is affected by stress. And if it goes on for a long period of time, it can really create some damage. And I remember my doctor told me once, this disease can make you sick, this illness can make you sick, but stress can kill you. And I think that's something that we all really need to be aware of and learn effective ways to manage that, so it doesn't become a long-term problem affecting all areas, of our lives. But stress can be a huge factor in the success or failure of an individual's business. And it's very easy for you as entrepreneurs to get caught up in taking care of your business and forget to take care of your own needs, which is why I really wanted to commend each of you for tuning into this workshop tonight for your own personal growth, and to find ways to manage some of these things that may be presenting issues for you. So if you want to type this in the chat box, and we're just kind of looking at what kind of things do people stress over, or what do you as entrepreneurs stress over? And I look at these photos, and I think probably at some point I can relate to every one of these, and maybe you can too, the way that these people are feeling. But I'm just interested to hear from you guys And it's also good to hear from each other to help you feel like you're not alone. If there's something that's really bothering you or stressing you out, that, hey, there's other people feeling this way as well. But if you guys are willing, what are some things in the chat box that you stress over as an entrepreneur? And for some reason, I'm not seeing the chat boxes, Mandy, so I may have to have you guys share that with me. Anybody?
Autumn said right now they are stressed. They have more money going out than they have coming in.
Big one. Absolutely.
I think
Financial can cause a lot of stress.
Deadlines and incomplete projects shared by someone else.
Okay. Deadlines, incomplete projects. Absolutely. That pressure, that anxiety, that, time constraints is a real stressor.
Okay. Kristen, I'm going to read one more, and then I'm going to tell you to jump in. The to-do list is longer than the day is. So I think we can definitely relate to that. Kristen, would you like to share with us?
Sure. I think for me, it's just almost like knowing what to do. I mean, there's all these different things out there. I feel like there's all these different ways of doing things, and there's just so many options. Knowing the right path is what stresses me out the most.
I think that's probably a common one, Kristen. And I think that some of the things we will be covering today will actually be quite helpful to you when we start talking about some of the mindfulness and giving your guidance for moving forward. So I'm glad that you shared that. And I think this will be helpful to you as we proceed through the rest of the training. But thank you guys for sharing that. And like I said, it helps you to know the things that other people are stressing over as well, so that you feel like it's not just you.
Yeah, and some additional
But
comments.
I hope.
Oh, sorry.
go
I
ahead.
just had a few additional comments. Of course, just exposure to clients maybe that aren't vaccinated or careful about flu. We've got lots of flu and stomach bugs and other things. So just getting sick in general as well. And then, of course, prioritizing, making decisions, and money, just getting everything done, staffing, keeping up with various marketing options. So all of those things that maybe you don't love about the business side of it, right?
Yes, and very valid concerns and stressors as well. So thank you all for sharing those in the chat box and for sharing verbally as well. So what I'm going to give you an opportunity to do, and I hope that you had a chance to print the assessments that they sent out to you. If you didn't, there should be a link, I think, that Mandy sent out that you can pull this up and look at it and just maybe jot the answers down as you look over that. But I'm going to give you just a minute. There should be a stress questionnaire that was provided for you. And what I'm going to do is give you a few minutes. It's just 25 yes or no questions. And just read through those, mark your answers, and we're going to talk just a little bit about the scoring. Just add those up. It tells you how to score it on the back of the sheet. I'm going to give you a minute to run through those. All right. Hopefully you've had a chance to go through the questions and the scoring. If you scored 4 points or less, you are least likely to suffer from a stress-related illness. And I'm just curious if you've completed the questionnaire by just a show of hands, how many of you scored a 4 or less on the screening? We seeing anybody? All right. Is there anyone out there that maybe scored 5 to 13 points? And this is a category where you're more likely to experience a stress-related health issue, mental health, physical, or both. And you would benefit from some stress management or perhaps individual counseling to help you in those identified areas. Did anybody score between 5 and 13 that's willing to share? Any of those?
I think Autumn gave us a thumbs up that she's in that 5 to
Okay.
13. I'll go ahead and
Okay.
hint. So when we did this in person, I was way above that 14.
Yeah, and that's what I'm wondering. Does that mean the rest of you are falling into the 14 or above, which is you're most prone to stress, showing a great many traits and characteristics that may be leading to some potential health issues. And you might be experiencing some stress-related conditions, and sometimes that can lead to diabetes, irritable bowel syndrome, migraines, back or neck pain, high blood pressure, heart disease, strokes, or mental health conditions such as depression, anxiety, those type of things. And if you are rating in this level, which I don't know if anyone has marked that or raise their hand for this category, but it's really significant that you do start to really take note of that and find some ways to de-stress just for your general well-being. And the less stressed you are and the better you feel, the more productive you're going to be in making those decisions and more confidence in yourself, because you just generally feel better all the way around. So there was the stress questionnaire, just giving you a little bit of personal insight as to where you fall into some of these categories. And we will move on for some.
Like 12 to 18. And I'm sorry, Rachel, I interrupted you. I was trying to help
No,
you.
it's fine.
Interrupting you, but average was 12 to 18 or somewhere in there.
Okay. Okay. All right. Good info to know, and good personal insight there. So let's talk about coping with stress. I have some suggestions here, but if there are any that you do that are not on this list that you want to share with us as a group, please feel free to type those out, because that might be something inspiring for someone else to try. But some ideas that I have is rebalancing your work and home. Maybe not taking work home in the evenings, or setting aside your phone to spend time like with your family, or to just sit there and do nothing. Build in some regular exercise. Sometimes exercise, just the word alone sounds like a task. So sometimes using the word physical activity might be a little, more inspirational, I guess. So if it's just getting up and, sweeping the floor, or vacuuming, or taking just a walk around the neighborhood, something light, just some sort of movement can really be helpful. Of course, we all hear about our diet, limiting alcohol, stimulants. A lot of times people burning the candle at both ends often will turn to a stimulant to help give them that extra boost of energy to maintain. And while that may seem to work in the short term, the recovery from stimulants can create a sense of fatigue and exhaustion, to the point where you're not able to do anything until you bounce back from, that stimulant use, despite, depending on how severe that stimulant is. So sometimes that can be really counterproductive. Connect with supportive people, carve out hobby time. Maybe there's that hobby that you're like, you know what? I always wanted to learn to play guitar, or I always wanted to try yoga, but I haven't made the time for it. Maybe that knocking under the hood, what I call in your gut, might be giving you that little push to, maybe it's time that you really set aside that time for yourself and to engage, in those activities. Meditation and or yoga. And I'm telling you guys, something that I've incorporated over the past couple of years in my life is I've become a wonderful fan of YouTube guided meditations. And if you're someone out there who has a lot on your mind, or you have trouble sleeping, or racing thoughts at night, or even during the day, is pull up YouTube and search. There's guided meditations on a variety of topics. There's relationship issues, stress, anxiety, personal empowerment. There's all sorts of topics that you can find, and just put some earbuds in, or put it on your phone and lay back and just listen to it, because it really helps to reset your mind. And I can tell you, it's been a lifesaver for me to start with that practice. So hopefully you guys will check those out. I know, go to bed early. There's the to-do list that you guys talked about. but being able to get enough rest at night actually prepares you to take on whatever that next day holds. And listen, I'm all about self-care and treating yourself. I am someone that, if I'm home alone and it's just me and I want like a 5-course meal, I'm going to cook a 5-course meal and light a candle and put on some jazz and just chill. But however that looks for you, treating yourself, it might be, soaking in the bathtub with a candle, or it might be, playing a video game just to debrief from the world, or, whatever that looks like to you, but build in that self-care and those treats to reward yourself for the hard work that you are doing, because that is so super important. Also, give yourself permission to rest. I promise you, it's not wasting your time. A lot of times that's what we think. Well, I'm just sitting here doing nothing. There's so much I need to be doing, but it's kind of like trying to run a race on a broken leg. You might get through it, but it's going to be very painful, and it's going to be exhausting, and it's probably going to cause more damage than taking time to heal. So make sure that you give yourself that permission through your own thoughts, through your own mindset, that it's okay to rest. And sometimes sitting on your porch and looking up at the clouds for, 20, 30 minutes is the most productive thing you could do that day, because it's refilling your tank. All right. Sometimes in the course of a day, you just have to take 5 minutes to just breathe. I can honestly say, in my job, I work as a therapist. I work with students with the Job Corps, and there's times that there's a lot of stuff going on, and there's times, actually this week, I've had to do this very thing, is just sit there for a minute, close my eyes, and just take a few deep breaths, and then proceed. It's amazing how just something that simple can really help you recharge. It's not something that takes all day. Just a few minutes can make a really big difference. I'm also a believer in creating a sacred space for yourself, both at home and at work. And whatever is soothing to you, light a candle, some calming decor, comfortable seating or lighting, anything that makes you feel comfortable in your environment. Because, if you're in your office or you're at work, that is the space that you're occupying for most of the day. When you go home and you want to relax, have a set place that, is soothing to you. For me, I love salt lamps. I love candles. I like a little bit of jazz, a little bit of Norah Jones. I don't know what that might be for you, but creating that sacred space that gives you permission to rest and relax, and just kind of debrief. It's so beneficial. Boundaries with others is super important, because people can wear you out. And it's important to be able to set boundaries for your own mental health and your well-being. Take a vacation. Can't stress that enough. A lot of times we neglect that area of our life, because if we take a vacation, it's going to be really piled up on us when we return. So just taking that time out for yourself is actually good for you, good for your business as well, so that you can think more clearly, be there, less illness, and be more productive. And as a licensed professional counselor, I can't stress enough how beneficial a visit to a counselor can be, or multiple visits to a counselor. I strongly believe in what I do, and I've seen firsthand the benefits of how it can really be life-changing for people. And, there doesn't have to be anything wrong. People can work on their own personal development, or, things that might be holding them back, or just finding ways to relieve that stress, and having that outlet is so therapeutic. So I highly recommend visiting a counselor to assist with any and all of these things. Any questions or comments up to this point?
I'm just
All right.
gonna, Autumn, you put it in the chat, so I hope it's okay if I share it. She had said, so her and her husband have the business together, and they make it a priority to do things to make them happy. But something they're doing right now is learning a foreign language together. And so I had just said back, that's great, that's awesome. What language are you learning? They said German. But it was kind of a bet with their son that they couldn't do it. So they have motivation. We love it. So you got motivation to learn that, all of them, and we think that's great. As long as that motivation continues to be positive, and because
Oh,
they hope to
yes.
travel one day, right? Hope to travel. So
That's awesome. I think that's a great thing to engage in. It gives you something to focus on, something new to learn, and it's something that you guys can do together. So I think that's an awesome thing, a good coping skill. Awesome.
and I'll just say, I remember one thing that we talked about maybe in the in-person is, and I remember your picture there of somebody kind of going, right? Sometimes actually doing your breathing exercises, looking at the sky, not looking straight or anything, can be helpful. So think about it. When you're exasperated, you go, oh my gosh, right? Well, maybe you actually you're trying to get some of that out. So trying to use it in different ways. But
Yes, yes. And whatever works for you, you know yourself better than anybody. And finding what works for you is what matters. Absolutely.
and Alyssa shared Insight Timer is a good app for guided meditations too.
I don't think I had heard of that one, so thank you for sharing that. There are a lot of different apps for meditations and things to manage anxiety as well. And I do think those are definitely worth checking out because they can be really, really helpful. Thank you for sharing that with everybody. All right, so sometimes what can happen is if stress goes on for a long period of time, feels like you're climbing the mountain and you're climbing, you're exhausting yourself, and then you slide down the next day, and you climb and climb and climb, and then you slide down the next day. That feeling of being overwhelmed for a period of time can actually lead into depression. And we're going to talk a little bit about that and what is depression based on environmental circumstance or like a clinical type depression. So, some of the symptoms, and you guys may be already familiar with some of these, but it's good to just recap, is depressed mood most of the day, decreased interest or pleasure in almost all activities. So the things that you used to enjoy, you just don't really find that enjoyment anymore. Some additional symptoms might be significant weight loss or weight gain, depending. Increased appetite and decreased appetite can both be a sign of depression. So it can go either way. Insomnia or hypersomnia, you can't sleep or you can't get out of bed. It can be one or the other, but it's to an extreme level there. Psychomotor agitation or retardation, you feel like you're kind of in slow motion, like you kind of just have to make yourself, get up in the morning or brush your teeth or take a shower or make yourself some coffee. It feels like a really big chore that goes along with fatigue, loss of energy, feeling sometimes worthless. And sometimes it can be feeling a lot of guilt. And you have trouble concentrating, trouble making decisions because you don't feel like you're thinking clearly, or you don't simply have the energy to even think things through. You're just pretty much kind of worn out and almost numb sometimes. And it's not uncommon for people experiencing significant depression to have thoughts about death, dying, or suicide. And that's definitely something that if it gets to that point, you definitely, could benefit from speaking to a counselor to kind of help you learn those coping skills. And, sometimes it is medication. If it's a chemical imbalance in the brain, that's what the medications do, is work on that chemical imbalance. Doesn't mean it's a personal weakness or a character flaw or anything negative. Sometimes it's just an imbalance in the brain. And sometimes it can be, successfully navigated through with just counseling and coping skills. So definitely being aware of, some of the symptoms of depression. And so with that, one of the big tools that we as therapists use in our sessions, and these are something that you can actually pull online as a self-assessment as well. They're really, really simple, is the Beck's Depression Inventory, or the BDI. And you should also have a copy of that. This is one of the most frequently used depression inventories to assess that level. So if you have that, or if you can see that and just write down the number for your answer, I'm going to give you guys just a few minutes to run through that. You just circle the number that most applies. It's going to take a little longer for this one because there's more questions. So I'm going to give you a few minutes on this, and then we will kind of talk about it from there. All right, so hopefully you've had a chance to read through the questions. I'm not going to ask anyone to share where you fall into the category with this, but I do want to just say that, sometimes when you're doing these assessments and you're really taking that inventory of yourself, sometimes it might be like, oh my goodness, I'm really depressed, or oh my goodness, my stress level's at the roof. So don't want you to come from a place of panic, but more so of a place of self-compassion and understanding and awareness, because you can't change anything unless you are aware of it. And so the reason that I wanted to provide these assessments is, for you to kind of just take note, take inventory of where you're at, and in hopes that if you are, scoring high on these, that you take the necessary steps so that it doesn't lead into, illness or loss of functioning or anything, severe. So I appreciate you guys taking the time to do that and looking at those things. So I'm not going to ask anybody about those scores, but I'm going to go ahead and move on about tips for coping with depression. We already talked about physical activity, but when you're active, it releases the feel-good endorphins in your brain. And it's one of the natural things that you can do to change your brain chemistry is physical activity. Any kind of movement counts. Sunlight. When we talked about biochemistry with the triangle of health, sunlight is a really big factor in the brain chemistry as well. So if you can get some sunlight or spend time in nature, that is very healing, and also a natural thing that you can do to boost your mood. Setting small goals. Sometimes we set goals that are not achievable. And I'm going to tell you, if you're dealing with depression, sometimes a major accomplishment is just getting up out of the bed and showering that day. And if that's all you did, then that's an accomplishment, right? You don't have to take on the world. You don't have to accomplish everything that you've ever set out to do in one day, but it's about being patient with yourself and setting those goals that are attainable. And again, going back to that level of self-compassion, not self-judgment. Water, biochemistry, it's going to affect your energy level, things like that, and avoiding alcohol and other substances. And I spent 9 months working with addiction and recovery, and I learned a lot during that time. And one of the big reasons that people sometimes use substances is either to cope with a mental health symptom, kind of like a self-medication, to cope with depression or unwanted feelings and things like that. So people will turn oftentimes to a substance. With alcohol, if someone is depressed and they are, drinking alcohol or, anything of that sort, it actually starts to change the brain to where the brain becomes more depressed. So it takes an increase in the substance, but it's also, you might feel some immediate relief, like, because you're intoxicated, you don't really care, you're not worried about whatever's causing you to be depressed. But what's happening over the long term in the brain is it starts to change the brain chemistry to where it becomes a chemical issue at that point. It could start out as a situational, depression. It could be a loss. It could be, stress that's causing depression, any of those things. But if it's prolonged, it can actually change the brain and become a clinical issue at that point. Becoming aware of your thinking and perceptions and being able to challenge them. We have a thought, which creates a feeling, which creates a behavior. So if you've got what I'm going to say, some stinking thinking going on, you might want to really start looking at what you're thinking and how you're perceiving yourself, because those perceptions lead to depression sometimes, or feeling down on ourselves, and then our behavior will correspond. So just really getting aware of what you're saying to yourself. I'm always going to advocate for talking to your counselor or talking to your primary care physician or someone that you trust, if you're going through this. And sometimes like a little mind hack thing that you can do is just intentionally shift your attention to a good memory or a happy thought. If you find that you're ruminating on something that's really hurtful or depressing or saddening. So just say, okay, at this point, I'm going to make a conscious choice to think something that is actually happy for me. So you shift that in your brain to change your chemistry by just simply thinking a more better feeling thought. And of course, reducing your stress can also help reduce depression as well. Any questions, comments, or anything in regards to depression? Right. So based on a lot of the answers that you guys talked about in the chat box and things that you worry about, things that stress you out, then we can come up with anxiety, because those things can create a lot of anxiety. Am I going to have enough money, to pay the bills this month, because I've got all these business expenses, and, how am I going to, afford these things? Those are big things that can create a lot of anxiety, the what ifs that get in our mind. So excessive anxiety and worry, or we can also call that apprehensive expectation, occurs more days than not for at least 6 months about a number of activities or events. And so the individual often finds it difficult to control the worry. This is more when we're thinking about like a generalized type anxiety. You can feel restless, keyed up, or on edge. You're very easily fatigued, difficulty concentrating, or your mind goes blank. Maybe you're irritable, you got muscle tension, you feel it in your face, you feel it in your shoulders or your chest, or maybe you're not sleeping because you're laying awake kind of thinking of, what if this happens? What if that don't happen? It can really be have a negative impact on your functioning. So anxiety, worry, or physical symptoms cause significant impairment in your social or your occupational or any other area of functioning. So maybe you're not able to go to work, or maybe you are isolating away from other people and it's starting to affect normal everyday activities. So that's when it, becomes a little more significant and perhaps an actual diagnosable condition. We all feel anxious from time to time. A little bit of that anxiety is good. It helps you to perform. It helps you to be your best. But when it is interfering with your functioning and it's persistent and you have trouble controlling that, that's when it's, more in a different level. So just something to kind of think about with anxiety. And then the Beck Anxiety Inventory is actually really short. And I'm going to give you guys a few minutes to check the boxes there, and it's scored 0, 1, 2, or 3. So take just a few minutes to do the Beck Anxiety Inventory, and we may look for some feedback on this one. All right, so tips for coping with anxiety. First of all, you want to be able to identify your triggers. All right, so we all have those things that trigger us, and we instantly kind of feel that anxiety. So being able to identify what those triggers are for you. Sometimes they might be triggers that you can avoid. Sometimes they may not be. So being able to identify those and really being able to come up with a plan of how you can react when you're presented with that trigger can be really helpful in managing those. Give yourself a reality check. Is this an imminent danger? I tell people all the time, anxiety is a liar, because it can make us think things, and react to them as if it is a major catastrophe when really it's just a thought. So that's something that you want to, kind of question, give yourself that reality check. Is this an imminent danger? Deep breathing, 4, 2, 6, breathe in through your nose, hold for 2, breathe out your mouth for 6 counts. That actually, the amount of oxygen that you get when you focus on your breathing actually creates a relaxation response in your brain. So I cannot stress enough the deep breathing factor as well in self-soothing. Identify your thoughts, but be able to identify your thoughts without jumping in the boat with them. So, throughout the day, we may have a thought, oh my goodness, what if this happens tomorrow? So then we jump in that boat and we ride the emotions of that, right? And then we're in that boat and another boat comes by and it's like, oh my goodness, I forgot to do this. What kind of catastrophe is this going to cause? And then you jump in that boat and you ride out all the anxiety with that. So what we have to learn to do is identify the thought without jumping in and having the emotional reaction to it. Okay, this is just a thought. And sometimes it's helpful to just put a label on it, anxious thought. If you have it, you just label it, anxious thought. And it separates you from, you kind of become the observer of the thought and not the active participant, because we can really fall victim to that thinking if we just jump in the boat with every thought we have. And it's exhausting and it's draining. Of course, I'm going to, advocate for meditation. MRI studies show the transition that takes place from someone even after one meditation session. And, it's proven to change the brain in a positive way. So I really highly recommend that. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in just a little bit. And then we've already talked about some of the other things as well. I'm not going to share the videos with you, but please check those out if you have a chance. One of them is a lady entrepreneur who is talking about signs of burnout. And the other one is, yes, it might be a little cheesy cartoon, but I promise you it's got some really good information. And it talks about, what is the difference in between being lazy and being burnout? Because sometimes if you're saying, oh, I'm lazy, well, that might not be the case. It's your burnout and your body has to recharge. So check out those videos if you guys get a chance at some point. But oftentimes burnout and depression can mirror each other. They can have a lot of the same symptoms. And so here is the difference. Depression is a diagnosable mental health condition. Burnout is not. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind. Burnout is, like I said earlier, you've climbed the mountain, you're exhausted, and you just do not have the mental or physical energy to put into things like you want to. And sometimes it's like almost people just go numb. They can't think clearly, a lot of those different things. So burnout is definitely something that entrepreneurs really need to watch out for. Along with perfectionism. So I would be willing, if I took a bet or I took a show of hands, there's probably some of you out there in Zoom land who would probably label yourself as a perfectionist. And that's something that we're going to spend a little bit of time on and how that affects mental health. So perfectionism is often seen as a positive trait that can increase your chances of success, but it can lead to self-defeating thoughts or behaviors that actually make it more difficult to achieve your goals. It may also cause stress, anxiety, depression, and other mental health conditions as well. Perfectionism is not the same thing as striving to be your best. I am the biggest advocate, put in your best, give it your all, being able to kind of go that extra mile, setting your goals. It doesn't mean to take any of that away. Perfectionism is not the same thing as striving, but perfectionism is perfection is not about healthy achievement and growth. All right. So there is the difference. So just kind of being aware of that. And this quote here by Brené Brown, if there's any Brené Brown fans out there, healthy striving is self-focused. Basically, you're saying, how can I improve? Perfectionism is other-focused. What will they think? So I just thought that was a very a good quote to put out there for you guys tonight. So signs of a perfectionist. Most people engage in perfectionism from time to time or in certain areas of life. People who are nearly full-time perfectionists may feel the need to achieve perfection constantly. They might also not be able to perform a task unless they know they can do it perfectly. So that's a check mark for you. You might be a perfectionist, or you view the end product as the most important part of the undertaking. And as a result, they may focus less on the process of learning or completing a task to their best ability. So they're more focused on how it's going to turn out. not see a task as finished until the result is perfect. Or this is a big one, procrastination. A lot of times people who are perfectionists will procrastinate, and they don't want to begin a task until they know they can do it perfectly. So oftentimes a lot of dreams that people have, a lot of aspirations, things that they want to do may not happen because they have that kind of fear of getting started because they're afraid it won't be perfect. See how your dreams, some goals that can fall to the wayside. Or it could be taking an excessive amount of time to complete a task that may not take, in general, long for someone else, but that perfectionist thinking can create that delay. So perfectionism and mental health. It's generally known to have negative consequences on mental health. And research shows that perfectionism has a high correlation to some of the things we've talked about: anxiety, depression, burnout, OCD, suicide risk, and eating disorders. And like the little picture, perfection sometimes can be stagnation. So just something to kind of point out there. The next part here are, what are 10 entrepreneurial competencies? And I came across this and I actually hadn't heard of these before, but I'm going to take a spin with these and give a different perspective. So here's what they label as the 10 competencies for entrepreneurs: opportunity seeking, persistence, commitment to work contract, risk taking, demand for efficiency and quality, goal seeking, information seeking, systematic planning and monitoring, persuasion and networking, and self-confidence. So I would be willing to kind of think that most of you can relate to any or all of these things as an entrepreneur with your business. So the twist I'm going to put on this is, how many of these competencies are you using in relation to your own well-being and self-care? Boom. Like, that's the big one. That's a big thing I want you guys to start thinking about. Are you looking for opportunities for self-care? All right. Are you persistent in taking care of yourself? Are you information seeking? What, like you are tonight, that falls into that category. You're looking for information. What are better ways to cope, to better yourself, your mental health, your well-being? And systematic planning and monitoring. Those assessments, they're one way to monitor, but systematically planning, how are you going to devote your time to your mental health and your well-being and your self-care, because that is so super important. So I am known for putting twists on things, so I hope you guys can resonate with that twist and start to apply these things into your growth and your self-care. Questions or comments up to this point? All right.
I keep losing my buttons. I just want to say, folks are talking in the chat a little bit, Rachel. So they're talking about, covering some of those things you've mentioned, getting, cortisol levels under control. And I was thinking back to that DNA and, mental health or counseling and things of that nature. So just thank you to everyone for sharing. And of course, this is what you're comfortable with. Joyce, looks like you want to share something with us.
It sounds like there's a lot of experience and wisdom in this group already. I just wanted to add that one of the things can you hear me?
Mhm.
Okay. And over the years, I have experienced some of each of these, and it took me a while to figure out that even though I'm in my business, especially the technical part and the publishing part of it, is very solitary. And I finally realized that as an extrovert, I need to get a certain amount of human contact. And I also love partnering my work with other people. And when I don't get enough of that, I really feel myself, my energy going down. And really, Zoom has been wonderful through COVID because even when we could not travel and go places, that you could still get that that contact with friends and colleagues and human beings. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce, for sharing all that. And that contact. We're social beings, and even if some of us identify as more of introverts, we still have that need for social interaction. So being able to connect with people is so beneficial to mental health. And also with you, Joyce, I think knowing yourself, and being open and aware that, hey, I know that when this starts lacking in my life, this is what I tend to feel, and this is what I need to do about it. So kind of like going back to identifying those triggers and knowing that and having a plan to counteract those things is so important. And I'm so appreciative that you shared that, because I think, pretty much most everybody's going to be able to relate to that. Yeah. Thank you. All right, so let's talk a little bit about mindfulness. We have about 25 minutes left tonight. I feel like we could go on and on and on, but we have about 25 minutes left. But when you look at this picture, you see this person, they're walking their dog, and then there's this little cloud bubble that's got all this stuff in it. And then you have this other cloud that's got the sun and the trees. And what it's asking is mindful or mindful. So basically, this person's walking their dog, and in the left bubble, it's like, I'm walking my dog, but I'm thinking about what I have to do tonight, what I have to do tomorrow, this, that, and the other. And it's taking away from the present moment, right? The body is there in the sunshine with the trees and your wonderful dog companion, but your mind is elsewhere. The dog is just enjoying the moment. The dog is enjoying the trees, the companion, the sunshine, things like that. So that's just a good visual, I think, about, is your mind full? Is your mind and your body in the same place? Or, are you being mindful and awake to each moment? And if you remember in school, they took a roll call and they call your name, you have to raise your hand and say, I'm here, or present, or whatever. If someone were checking in with you randomly throughout the day, how many times could you actually raise your hand and say, I'm present? Meaning my mind and my body are in the same place. Probably not very often, right? Maybe during this workshop, you're thinking about, what you got to do with your kids when you get off here, or what you got to do to get ready for tomorrow, or, the mind just kind of wanders. So it's really taking a conscious effort to bring yourself into the present moment. And, when we look at this, oftentimes people who are focused more in the past oftentimes have some feelings of anger or resentment or, sadness. People tend to focus their attention more on things from the past. People who tend to focus their attention more on the future tend to be more anxiety prone. So these are the folks that are feeling some fear, some anxiety, perhaps even some dread. And most often you're either in one or both, and you may identify primarily with one or the other of these. But what do you think? And I am looking for one word, and I wish I had a prize, but I'm going to give you an imaginary prize if whoever guesses this first. But what is one feeling or one word that you think you would feel if you actually could bring yourself into the present moment, not being focused on the past or the future, just the present? One word. Anybody want to take a guess?
Peace. Peace.
Joyce, did you? Yes, Joyce, absolutely. And here's my little box. You are right on. And you know what? I think a lot of times people aren't really even, they think they want this or that or the other, but I really think most of us just want peace, right? We work a job, we get our finances in order, we get this because we think we're going to have more peace. Well, there's people who are very, very wealthy that don't have peace, right? So that's what I think we all try to aim for. And the more that you can work things into your life that create that sense of peace for you, the more that you can consciously bring yourself into the present moment without the regrets of the past or the worries about the future, you help yourself attain that level of peace.
And I'll just say
So when
that
it comes to
you
mindfulness,
people said, you know,
what's
now,
that?
being in the now and contentment, which I think contentment and peace, so all of that, definitely. Thanks for sharing, everyone.
Yes, thanks. Right on. And with meditation, maybe you've tried it and maybe you're like, man, I can't sit still. My mind won't stop thinking. I don't have time for that. Or that just sounds boring, or I won't be any good at it, or that's not going to help. Those are common things people think when they hear about meditation. So I want to kind of just give you some insight into mindfulness, because it might not be as hard as you think. And the thing is not about controlling your mind. You're going to have those wandering thoughts. It's more so not letting your thoughts control you, and not jumping in the boat like we talked about earlier. So mindfulness, it's not a religion. There's no necessary religious component to mindfulness. Anybody with any belief system can enjoy the benefits of mindfulness. It actually originated in ancient meditation practices, but the modern founder is Jon Kabat-Zinn, who founded the Stress Reduction Clinic in Massachusetts Medical School. So a little bit of background. So here's the definition. Mindfulness: paying attention on purpose, in the present, and non-judgmentally to the unfolding of experience moment by moment. Beautiful definition. You're paying attention intentionally to the present without judgment and being open to the unfolding, not being attached to the outcome. Most of us, we have to know right this second how this is going to turn out. Is this relationship going to end? Is this business going to make it? Is this, we don't have a way to know that right now. But as it unfolds, that's, being mindful in the process. All right. Benefits. So many benefits of mindfulness and meditation. It can help you slow down automatic thoughts or reactions. Sometimes people have those knee-jerk reactions where if they're triggered, they're going to lash out or they're going to say something. It helps to prevent that. It helps you respond more effectively to complex or difficult situations, which is so needed as an entrepreneur. You can see things more clearly. You can achieve balance and more resilience at work and home. It reduces stress and anxiety. It can totally increase your quality of life because you're living in the present and enjoying that, which is all you ever really have, instead of being back here or being, in the future. Increases your awareness. And I'm telling you something about creativity. The mind is most creative when it is still. All right. I'm going to give you a little a visual of that here in just a minute, but keep that in mind. You are most creative when you can be still than when you're trying to figure everything out. It enhances your physical and mental health as well. A couple of quotes here. Mindfulness is the ability to see what kind of urge or impulse is arising in your consciousness right now without taking the bait and acting on it. That's beautiful, right? All right. Mindfulness is consciously choosing to be awake and living the experiences of your life in each moment. It is the opposite of living mindlessly. So perhaps you've ever, felt like you've been on autopilot. You ever arrived at a destination not remembering anything about your journey, or you started driving and ended up passing your turnoff because you didn't know, were somewhere else, or you started eating and realized that you had nothing left and you didn't even taste what you ate. Sometimes we are on autopilot. Okay, we're somewhere else. So you need to get off autopilot, grab control of the wheel, and change course if you feel professionally depleted or trapped, work harder for less money and little thanks, have a permanent feeling of uneasiness, that you've lost precious time with family and friends due to the longer hours, you feel disconnected from your dreams, or you've become apathetic to change. So those are signs that you might kind of be living on autopilot, and just really making that conscious effort to be present. And really, that is the most valuable gift that we can give anyone, is that gift of presence. And if you've ever been talking to someone, you know when they're with you and you know when they're not in their head, right? You know, when someone gives you that presence, that's the beauty of seeing a counselor. You've got someone, totally focused on you for, an hour. And, it's a beautiful thing to be present with someone. And one of the big things I work with people on is intention, turning off that autopilot and living with intention. So when you get up in the morning, set an intention for your day. That could be something each day. It might be that I'm going to remain calm, or I'm going to take, time to breathe throughout the day, practice this deep breathing, or whatever it might look like for you. Start setting an intention. And I don't know if I have any Wayne Dyer fans in Zoom land, but I'm a really big fan of Wayne Dyer. And I listen to podcasts of him on my way to work. If I'm stressed or there's things that's kind of going on in my life, he has been such a soothing, person for me to listen to. And if you haven't checked him out, I strongly encourage you guys to look him up. He talks a lot about living with intention, and a lot of things that are just good, to help your overall well-being. So a simple mindfulness technique, okay, it doesn't take a lot of time, is the stop. Okay. What you do is, if you're feeling overwhelmed, stop what you're doing, take a breath, observe what is going on within you, how your body feels, observe what is going on around you, and then you proceed. A very, very short and simple mindfulness technique that all of us have time to do. You just give yourself a minute, stop what you're doing, take a conscious breath, observe. It might be, oh man, I feel like my shoulders are really tense, or I'm starting to get a headache, or, whatever. And then I'm just going to proceed. So you can observe without judgment, just awareness. And so, some of the things that you can do, and this is, just, start to pay attention to your breathing. It could be noticing the sounds in the room. Right now I hear a clock ticking. Notice the temperature, or do you hear, the heat? Notice how your body feels in your chair. Is your back supported? How do your feet feel on the floor? Notice how you are feeling. And you observe any wandering thoughts and let them go. So you're seeing the boats, but they're still passing you by. Okay, so a very conscious technique for mindfulness. We're going to skip over the mindful breathing and important stuff here. How do you make mindfulness part of your daily life? Well, it's quite simple. You can do this in anything, any way that works for you. It could be on your drive to work, that you're mindful, that you're enjoying the scenery, or maybe you're listening to your favorite, music on the radio and being present and enjoying the music. It could be on the walk into your building from your car, instead of thinking about that first appointment, or all the tasks that you have to do that day. Is just being like the dog and enjoy the sun, or feel the breeze on your face. Just being present, just from a simple walk inside your building from your car. It could be in the mundane daily tasks. So what I tell people, and people usually get kind of, they kind of chuckle, is if you're doing the dishes, be with those dishes. If it's smelling the detergent, the dish liquid, feeling how it feels when it lathers, or how your water feels, how your hands feel in the water, whatever that is, just being present with it. It could be when you're in the shower, just being mindful and just feeling how the water feels when it hits your hair, when it, is running across your body, just being there present while you're cooking, while you're eating. And here's a big one. I'm going to say when you're waiting in line somewhere and you're impatient, you have to consciously say, okay, well, there's 6 people ahead of me. I have nowhere to go. I have to get this stuff. So here's a valuable opportunity to just be mindful. And, I'm just going to tune into my breathing. I'm going to tune into the present moment, and I'm just going to be here. Acceptance of what is. If you can't change it, just come into that acceptance. Spend at least 5 minutes a day doing nothing. It is productive. And Wayne Dyer says we are not human doings, we are human beings. And I think that's important to know. And he says, I am a human being, not a human doing. Don't equate your self-worth with how well you do things in life. You aren't what you do. Because if you are what you do, then when you don't, you aren't. I think that's a very significant quote, to think about. Eckhart Tolle is another one that I highly recommend. He says, when you step into the content, step into the now, you step into the content of your mind. The incessant stream of thinking slows down. Thoughts don't absorb all of your attention anymore. They don't draw you in totally. Gaps arise in between thoughts. There's spaciousness and stillness. And you begin to realize how much vaster and deeper you are than your thoughts. So there's a couple of challenges here. Make a conscious effort to slow down for 15 minutes each day. Challenge 2, unplug. Give yourself a few minutes with no agenda. Listen for the silence in between your thoughts. Sit away from your phone for a few minutes. And here's the other thing. We all have a to-do list. And I know, it does seem to get longer every day. And the more you cross off, which is such a gratifying feeling when you can cross that off your list, but usually there's something to add back to it, right? But, we have a to-do list, but how many of us actually have a to-be list? And that's also a handout that you guys should have. I don't know if you've had a chance to print it or not, but I want you guys, at some point to maybe get that to-be list out and just write down what are some of those things that you want for yourself. Some people might say, I just want to be loved. I want to be kind. I want to be creative, forgiving, generous, compassionate. I want to be peaceful. So just a kind of a flip there for you to think about. Yes, we all have the to-do list, but let's create a to-be list too. Lots of different things that could be added onto that list.
And Rachel, one of the things that I think, and I do this myself, but Kathy has shared it and they were talking about it in the chat a little bit, was doing a mind dump, like notebook or list. And I call it my brain dump. Literally on my Teams, I have a Mandy brain dump tab. And like if I'm going through email, I just write to-dos on that, right? Or at home, I have a notes. And so it sounds like, some other people may do that. And that is one way that we may be able to clear your brain out, because you have all these to-do items. So clear that brain out so you can take the 5 minutes for yourself. And I think someone else called it morning pages. Sounds like maybe it's just a way to get everything out that's sitting there, and then create your everything else. So I just want to share that in the chat because it was good stuff.
Great stuff, and definitely great information. And so appreciate the sharing, because this is your workshop. We all learn from each other, and appreciate you guys sharing that. All right, another quote: realize deeply that the present moment is all you ever have. Life is just a collection of the nows. And here is the example I told you guys before. I don't know if you've ever seen one of these, but it's a glitter ball. It's kind of like a snow globe, but it's just a little plastic ball with glitter in it and water. But if you guys will visualize this with me, it's kind of like the glitter in the ball is like all of the things that you have to do and all of the stressors in your life. And most of the time, what we do is we're going around and we're shaking up that ball because we're trying to sort and we're trying to figure out an answer. We're trying to get a plan. We're trying to figure everything out right this minute. So it's kind of like just shaking that thing up. So if you visualize that, that glitter is just going everywhere. What seems counterproductive is to be still. You know, like, how can I be still? I've got this to do. I've got all of this, you know, I have to figure it out. But what seems counterproductive is the most productive thing that you can do. Because what happens to the glitter ball if you just hold it in your hand? It settles. The glitter settles. And then you can look through with some clarity, right? You can get those answers that you need when you're coming from a place of stillness. But when you're shaking it around and you're in this kind of urgency of having to try to figure everything out all at once, you know, you lose that creativity and the best answers that you could come up with. So it comes from a place of stillness, not the chaos. So if you can use that as a visual in your head, you know, hey, I'm shaking that glitter ball right now. I need to, you know, chill a minute. If that helps you moving forward, then, you know, by all means. And we got just a couple of minutes left. The visual of this guy, and I don't know why they all put dogs in these pictures, but I guess dogs must help get in that Zen mode. I have a cat, but you know, pets are pets, and you know, whatever. But this guy, if you look at this picture, I would imagine he's probably like in New York or somewhere. There's a lot of background noise. I could picture horns blowing, people talking, people screaming, you know, traffic, but he is yet still calm. All right. And so one of the biggest things I think that you can adapt for your life is being able to find that sense of calm and that sense of stillness, even in the chaos. Does that make sense? So, you know, if you have to use this visual or think about it like, okay, yes, things may be a complete, you know, utter disaster out here, but right now, in this room, in this space, I'm safe, I'm well, I'm okay. And so being able to mentally visualize that or consciously create that space, even if there's chaos, is going to be one of the biggest things that you can do to combat the stress, the anxiety, the burnout, being overwhelmed, you know, all those things that we mentioned earlier. And last thing I'm going to read here is just a poem called Walk Slowly. It says, it takes only a moment to breathe, a moment to be still. And just like that, something in me settles, softens, makes space for imperfection. The harsh voice of judgment drops to a whisper, and I remember again that life isn't a relay race, that we all cross the finish line, that waking up to life is what we were born for. As many times as I forget, catch myself charging forward without even knowing what I'm doing or where I'm going, that many times I can make the choice to stop, to breathe, and be, and walk slowly into the mystery. I love that. It gives me chills. I just think it's a great way to end the presentation. We don't have time for this meditation, but I highly encourage you check this one out. The mountain meditation it's a shortened version on here, but I definitely encourage you to check that out and just kind of listen to that. It really gives you a good way to kind of see yourself in the midst of everything. So I just want to say, may you savor every moment and be present in your own life.